Monty Williams was fired by the Detroit Pistons, and under no circumstances should the Pelicans look to bring him in as an assistant coach. And I've got an incredible clip that we're going to play on Locked On Pelicans that tells you why. Plus, I've also got a blockbuster trade that brings Bam Adebayo to New Orleans. It's a Thursday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Thursday, we got a jam-packed show. Absolutely not. I'm going to play y'all a clip in a second that you don't want to miss. Absolutely not to Monty Williams. Also, Willie Green isn't going to Detroit. He's probably going to be the head coach of the Pelicans next year. And then I've got a blockbuster trade that brings Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro to New Orleans. That's what we're covering in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Tell friends about the show and join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Monty Williams fired by the Pistons. Trajan Langdon there now. They're moving on from him. Could there be a reunion in New Orleans where he got to start as a head coach? They should not do this. The Pelicans should not do this. You might have all the frustrations you want in the world with Willie Green. You might not like him as a head coach, but I want you to listen to this. I'm going to play a clip from our Locked On Pistons host who covers this team probably better than anyone else, that tells you all you need to know about Monty Williams. Here's the clip.
But the very easy answer is this past season was an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. I've already seen clips saying, thank God Monty's out. They did him a favor. No, this situation was terrible because of Monty Williams. Monty Williams contributed to why this situation was terrible. We've talked about it nonstop. The losing streak, the worst season in Pistons history, the decision to play Killian Hayes over Jaden Ivey long stretches of the season, the consistent lying to the beat writers and to the fan base about shrinking the rotation, understanding they need to shrink the rotation than just to play 11 guys in the first quarter, the insistence on playing all bench lineups that were consistently getting outplayed so badly that the starters would come back in down 10 and have to fight their way back.
Yeah. You want that person on the bench here? Here's the thing with all of that. Like this season, as Koo said, the Pistons were a complete disaster. There's no reason to want to bring that coach in and let them help. One of the things that Monty Williams is very similar to Willie Green in a way. He gets stuck in his ways. He's very stubborn when it comes to things. And when he was fired in New Orleans, we can look back on the Alvin Gentry tenure and not like it, but it was still the correct move to fire Monty Williams and move on there for the way the franchise was going, even after he had made the postseason. This team was not trending in the right direction under him, and maybe some things since then haven't gone the way we'd like him to be, but it doesn't mean you want to look back on the history with rose-colored glasses. That's why I refuse to be like, Dell Demps was great. No, he wasn't. Like, none of that era was particularly good and not something that I want to see revisited. And Monty Williams has grown. Monty Williams has grown as a coach. He has gotten less stubborn, less rigid from talking to people in Phoenix and other places too. But Willie Green is a bit of a disciple of Monty Williams. He is referred to Monty Williams as a brother. So I don't doubt there's interest from Willie Green and people in the front office to bring in Monty Williams. But no, they shouldn't. For your criticisms that you, Willie Green hater, probably have are, focuses too much on defense, not enough on offense, doesn't play the young guys, kind of gets fixated on those like aging veterans that give you nothing and doesn't develop young players, right? That's all Monty Williams. They literally had to cut Killian Hayes so that he would stop playing Killian Hayes over Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey was the 4th overall pick, 5th, whatever he was, and a guy that they need to just give minutes to and see what they have in him. And he wouldn't do that. So they had to waive a player and just eat that salary. Absolutely. That's something we've said New Orleans needs to do for Willie Green. I don't want to bring in an assistant coach that might bring out some of the worst tendencies of Willie Green. Monty has won games. He's got the proven track record. He does connect with players well, but I don't think they need that type of situation here in New Orleans. What does that actually add? Now, New Orleans is going to have like 3-4 potential spots on the bench for assistant coaches to fill out. So you need people there, but there's plenty of coaches that you can go and hire. And if they end up wanting to go with Monty Williams, they'll want to go with Monty Williams. That would worry me. I don't think it'll be the end of the world. It's not like he'll be the default head coach or anything like that. But this is the year that we're looking for growth from Willie Green, because Willie Green is going to be the head coach next season for the Pelicans. More on that in the next segment here. So no, don't bring Monty Williams in. Now, you might be able to get him for cheap. He's getting paid a boatload of money by the Detroit Pistons, certainly, and he'll still get paid. So maybe he signs here for less money. There's something to be said for that. This organization likes to save money where they can. Everyone likes to save money wherever they can. And again, he's got the proven track record. And if James Borrego leaves, and it's expected that he will, then maybe you want to bring in someone with, head coaching experience. Monty Williams fits that. There's kind of the nice reunion side of things here. I think Monty's going to end up taking at least a year off from coaching and just stick with his family for right now, personally. But could see him here on the bench, but don't particularly want it. Like, that season was so bad. You're frustrated that Jordan Hawkins isn't playing again. Jordan Hawkins, in my opinion, wasn't the answer, but I would have liked to have seen him get more minutes. Go back to Trey Murphy's rookie year. We wanted to see him. They almost lost in the play-in tournament because Willie Green wanted to play Tony Snell over Trey Murphy. No, that gets maybe doubled here with Monty Williams and Willie Green on the bench. You've got to develop some of these young guys too, while also trying to win. And Monty has said, he doesn't like to babysit. He doesn't like doing any of that. He just wants to coach. But assistant coaches focus a lot on player development more so than the head coach does. And so if he's not going to really kind of take to that role, I'm less interested in having that type of person on the bench in Willie Green's ear. So absolutely not. No to Monty Williams coming to New Orleans as an assistant coach. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. And I said assistant coach, not head coach, because I've seen some people try and link Willie Green to Detroit. That ain't going to happen, and I'll tell you why. It's actually pretty straightforward, but a little more complicated than you think. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. It's the summer, and that means it's baseball season. So if you love going to MLB games during the summer, Game Time is the way to go. Game Time is like the ticketing app that I use just for everything now. And they're also an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. One of the things they have is last minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You're trying to figure out what you want to do on a Friday? Get on the Game Time app, look it up, see what's going on in your city, in New Orleans or elsewhere. You're going to find some fun things to do, and you're going to get a good price on it with the Game Time app. They also have the lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, so you can buy really anytime and know that you're getting the best deal possible. And you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy if it's a place you've never been to before. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday. And if you're an everydayer, I appreciate y'all. That's what makes doing this so much fun, being able to talk Pelicans with you. And we got the draft next week. We'll be talking a little bit more about the draft tomorrow. I want to get into a Trey Murphy extension and what that's going to look like next week, because that's going to hit like almost immediately after the draft. 2 days of draft coverage as well. It's going to be a lot of fun here. So make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. For your second listen today, Locked On Saints, Ross Jackson making sense of everything black and gold. How's Dennis Allen going to do now that we're talking about coaches and everything today? Better, worse? Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints, is going to make sense of it all. So let's keep talking about the coaching situation and head coach Willie Green. I've seen some people, and I went on ESPN radio with Cus Gattengill on the Sports Hangover, and he asked me about this, and I've seen people tweeting it at me. And I think this is a little too much. Y'all are trying to, connect some dots that aren't there. I've seen people saying, could Detroit try and get Willie Green to be their head coach, right? Willie Green is from the Detroit area. Trajan Langdon, former GM of the Pelicans, now runs the Pistons. He likes Willie Green. So, yeah, there's some ties there. But look, this isn't going to happen. And it's for one straightforward reason. Well, there's a couple reasons why. It's a lateral move, going from head coach to head coach, right? When it comes to, an assistant coach getting a promotion, you don't tend to stop that. But if it's a lateral move, you can. We've seen the Pelicans deny assistant coaches the permission to interview for other assistant coach jobs that are lateral moves. Since this is a lateral move, the Pelicans would need to approve any sort of interview. And also, if he were to be hired, they would need compensation. Great for the Pelicans if that's what you want. But here's the thing. That isn't what they want. If the Pelicans didn't want Willie, if they let him go to Detroit, it means they don't want him as the head coach. If the Pelicans didn't want Willie Green as the head coach, they'd have fired him by now. He wouldn't be the head coach right now. They don't need a reason to fire him. They don't need justification to fire him. They can just do it. If he goes to Detroit, it would mean that they don't want him as the head coach. And if they didn't want him as the head coach, why are you doing it like 3 months, 2 months later after your season ended? You would have made that move. You're behind on the coaching search cycle right now. More on that in a minute here. I've seen speculation, let's call it, about them trying to kind of have the optics set for Detroit wanted him, and he wanted to go there, so we let him go. And then it's like, cool, we can actually go and get the coach we want now. No, you could just fire him, man. You don't need to overthink this. And they didn't. They can just do it. I even did a show on what the reasoning would be if they were to fire him. For the everydayers, you've heard me do that. If New Orleans fires Willie Green, this is the reason why. But you also just don't need a reason. You can do it. It's like in a breakup, right? Everyone's like, well, I got to have a good reason to break up with my girlfriend, boyfriend. No, you don't. You can just do it for whatever reason you want at any time. You don't need a cause for this sort of thing. If you didn't want Willie Green, he would not be the head coach right now. If they actually wanted James Borrego to be the head coach, he would be the head coach. Go back to when they were considering firing Gentry. You had Chris Finch on the staff, and they didn't believe that Chris Finch was going to be a good head coach, so they didn't fire Alvin Gentry, and they didn't promote him to being an interim, and that was a mistake, right? But they could have. They didn't. And it wasn't because they were like, oh, we need a reason to fire Alvin Gentry. No, it was just they didn't think there was a better option there right now. And they wanted to stick with what they had in the moment because they wanted Ty Lue. They couldn't get Ty Lue, so they may as well stick with Alvin Gentry. Same situation here. If they wanted Borrego to be the head coach, he would be the head coach. It is that simple. And I also talked about how it kind of puts them behind on the coaching search right now, right? Their season ended on on what day? How many days ago did the Pelicans season end? I'm recording this on June 19th. Their fourth game against them was April 29th, right? That's a month and a half ago. So you're looking at, let's call it 2 months, something like that, right? We're 10 days away from it. It's like 50 days ago. You don't need to wait 50 days to fire your head coach if you want him gone. The guy they wanted, that they were planning to hire before they ended up interviewing Willie Green and going in his direction, was Charles Lee, who was then an assistant on the Milwaukee Bucks. That was who they were going to hire, and then they kind of were like, oh, maybe we should interview Willie Green, and then Willie Green blew them away. They wanted to hire Charles Lee, who was then an assistant on the Bucks, most recently an assistant on the Boston Celtics. That would be the first person I would assume that they would try and interview if they move on from Willie Green. Except He took the Charlotte Hornets job. He's a head coach now. You can't go and hire him. So they're missing out on who would probably be their number one guy. There's no reason to go about this and fire Willie Green this late in the process, a week before the draft, if Detroit was like, yeah, we want him. And given that Detroit probably wants to play young guys, right? You know, when I was thinking about trade target Thursdays here, and we'll talk about Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro in the next segment, I was talking to my friend Alex, and I was like, who you got here? And he was like, what about Jaden Ivey because of like the Pistons and everything and their turmoil? And I was like, you know, that's kind of good, except now they'll probably play Jaden Ivey because they're going to hire a head coach who will develop young guys. That was a huge issue there, right? And you're not going to bring in a coach that doesn't do that. There's no way Willie Green would do that. So you need to absolutely, they're going to go in a different direction. And so that is all to say that Willie Green is going to be the Pelicans head coach next season. Yeah, the extension hasn't been announced. Anything like that doesn't matter, right? David Griffin's extension didn't get announced. They're not looking to fire him or anything like that. They could just have gotten away from Willie Green, hired whoever they wanted. They didn't. And that says that they want Willie Green to be the head coach. They're not looking to bring in Monty Williams and potentially elevate him. I think they might want to look to keep Borrego and maybe see if Willie Green struggles to start next season. Do you then fire him mid-season and elevate Borrego? Like, you could do that. You know, that's maybe a reason to bring in Monty Williams. But again, Monty Williams, as we played that clip from Kuka Hill over at Locked On Pistons, not the move in my opinion whatsoever. And I'd be willing to bet that a lot of you agree with that. It sounds great in theory, but no. And when you think about Willie Green, you can just get rid of him at any time. Like, you don't need, you know, like a justification here. You can just do it. You're the team. You control everything here. You can just fire him. You know, it's not like he's particularly loved by the fan base. It's not like you need to sell that to anybody. You can just decide to make a change. There's also the fact that, you know, David Griffin would then be on his 4th head coach during his tenure here. And I don't think that would reflect well on him. So I think he's probably going to be hesitant to do that too. And all of this is a roundabout way of saying, or the long way of saying, Willie Green's going to be the head coach of the Pelicans next season. That's maybe fine. We'll see who they fill the staff out with. There's definitely going to be some changes. And I think getting some fresh blood in here, there'll probably be some internal promotions, but I think they'll also bring in some outside people too, as the coaching carousel is like kind of just getting started with some of this stuff here too. So the offseason is just now truly getting going, and that still involves the head coaches and everything. Borrego, by the way, we've seen also linked to the Detroit job. That makes sense. That might mean the Cavs move to hire him really quickly. I wouldn't be shocked if that's maybe announced later, you know, today, tomorrow, very, very soon, as they kind of realize there's some pressure to make a decision on that. The funniest thing, the absolute funniest thing would be the Pistons trying to hire, like just offering their job to JJ Redick. Just go on in and be like, JJ, it's yours if you want it right now. Here's the money. And just kind of steal him from the Lakers in a sense after their long, you know, protracted, what's the word I'm looking for there? Protracted, like, hiring process that is just a little weird for the Los Angeles Lakers. So that's all the coaching stuff. By the way, Fred Vinson, that's the other one. Fred Vinson's still going to go to Detroit. Like, he's a good shooting coach. They need shooting help. They were going to bring him in regardless. He's not coming back to New Orleans. He's for sure going to be in Detroit on whatever head coach it's going to be there. And he'll probably have a bit of a prominent role. I'd be willing to bet with that too. Don't forget, he interviewed for the Pelicans head coaching job that ultimately went to Willie Green too. He wants to, you know, grow his career. I don't think it's, you know, a negative thing that he's kind of moving on and going everywhere. Good for him. Trade target Thursday. Can I interest you in Bam Adebayo, defensive center? You want rim protection? You want defense? Got Bam Adebayo for you. And some shooting, Tyler Herro. Blockbuster trade coming up here. But there's one set of circumstances that make this work, and then a potential deal breaker. We're going to look at all of that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. And you just pick more or less on 2 or more players' stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. With Prize Picks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds, and you just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stats projections, and then you're locked in. And if you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week. From lowering select players' stats projections on Tuesdays, which is going to increase your chances of getting a win, to giving you your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Friday. So there's always action over at Prize Picks, and it's the perfect time to try something new as basketball is now over. So make sure to try out esports this month, because every Wednesday and Saturday in June, if your lineup doesn't win, you get your entry fee back. Choose from Counter-Strike 2, Call of Duty, League of Legends, and more. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's a first deposit match up to $100 when you download the Prize Picks app and use code LOCKEDONNBA. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Now for your second listen, don't go to those places where they just don't talk sports. Fox Sports, ESPN on your TV all day long. They're just kind of like yelling, right? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the yelling. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay. Trade Target Thursday. And I got a blockbuster one. So we're looking at the Miami Heat. And the trade, the too long didn't listen part of this is Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, Jordan Hawkins, and like 3 or 4 first-round picks going to the Miami Heat for Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro. It's a lot to give up, but Bam Adebayo is probably should have won a Defensive Player of the Year by now, hasn't. You want rim protection? He's arguably one of the best 3, 4, 5 rim protectors in the league. He's about as good as it gets as a center. You know, he can score, he can play down low, doesn't shoot the 3, that doesn't matter. He's giving you the rim protection that you want from him. This is a guy who averages almost a block per game, but is just a force down low. 19 points per game last season, 10.4 rebounds, 4 assists as well, a steal, a block. He is very, very good. He was on the all-defensive first team. He's made 5 all-defensive teams. He was 3rd in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Perfect, right? That's kind of what you want. That's the center. There you go. We fixed the center position. He can be a low-usage guy, too. You also have Tyler Herro, who has good size on the wing as a shooting guard, kind of wing player for Miami, and he shoots the 3 ball with volume exceptionally well. This is a career 39% shooter from 3 on almost 7 attempts per game. Last season, he shot 40% on 8 attempts. That's making over 3 threes per game. 21 points per game, 4.5 assists. There's ball handling, there's shooting there. He's also like a decent enough rebounder for his size too. And what's great about him is he can start, he can come off the bench depending on your lineup and how you need it. In this scenario, he would probably be starting. So it's like we would just do that trade in a second, right? Like that's a no-brainer. Ingram, CJ, Hawkins, 4 first-round picks, let's call it, for Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro. That's like, I don't think we would have any question about making that move immediately. But there's 2 things that hold this potential trade up. So let me know yes or no on that part alone. On that part alone, is that a yes? Is that a no for you? Is that too many picks to give up, right? You know, but Bam Adebayo's got 2 more years. Tyler Herro has 3 more years, so they're under contract. The 2 things that hold this up are twofold. One part's out of the Pelicans' control. One is in the Pelicans' control. The first part of this is, I think this only works, and the only reason the Miami Heat would do this is if Jimmy Butler were to leave. Thank you, Alex, for this idea. If Jimmy Butler goes to Philadelphia and we're hearing rumors that they're going to offer him a max deal, maybe he's like, no, I want to go to LA and play with the Lakers. If Jimmy Butler leaves, then I think the Miami Heat get put in a really bad and uncomfortable position and might do this sort of trade. Only if Jimmy Butler leaves. If he stays, one, this doesn't work at all salary-wise, and they wouldn't get rid of Bam Adebayo as long as they have Jimmy Butler. Brandon Ingram kind of overlaps a little bit there. That's, I think, one of the first things to really consider with this. The other part is, say Jimmy Butler leaves. Brandon Ingram, CJ Hawkins, 4 first-round picks for Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro, I don't think is actually enough. I think to get this deal done over the finish line and to get the Miami Heat to say yes, you're going to need to include one of, you know who I'm going to say here, Trey Murphy or Herb Jones. You can even include Najee Marshall in a signing trade since I think he's gone anyway, and he's like a perfect Miami Heat player. But I do think you would need to include, in addition to Hawkins, CJ, and Ingram, Trey or Herb. Man, it's just so hard to trade either one of them. Now, we talked about it in yesterday's show of look at the Boston Celtics trading away Marcus Smart, their kind of heart and soul of that team, the culture bearer for them. It's a weird word to use with it. But kind of like the heart of their culture. And, you know, they made the tough choice, but they did it. They brought back Porzingis, and that was clearly the right move as they've now won an NBA title. You know, so you could, you know, to take that big swing for 2 very good players, including a guy that could win Defensive Player of the Year and be your anchor down low in Bam Adebayo, make that move. It's still really, really tough to do that. Your starting lineup also gets a little bit crazy then. Say it doesn't matter which one's included, Herb or Trey, pick one here. Your starting lineup then with Ingram, CJ, and let's say it's Herb Jones going out, is now Bam Adebayo, Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, Tyler Herro, and who? Now maybe you sign a point guard in free agency, you know, but you don't have a ton of money. This does save the Pelicans money, actually, about $10 million, but that's only somewhat useful for just giving you breathing room against the luxury tax. That doesn't give you $10 extra million to spend in free agency. They would still be stuck with like the mid-level exception. I don't know if there's really like a starting caliber point guard who would take that. Tyus Jones is out there. You could potentially sign him. He wants a starting role, but I think he wants more than the mid-level exception, which maybe complicates this a little bit, unless you just throw the full thing at him. So how do you feel? Let's say he takes it, just for argument's sake. Tyus Jones, Tyler Herro, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, and Bam Adebayo. You know, your bench feels a little bit thin then. You know, you'll have the 21st pick, but that might be included in this trade. You know, coming off the bench, you'll have Larry Nance Jr. as your first guy. I don't know if I love that. Right? You still probably need to address, you know, a number of areas. So how much better does this make you? You'll have Larry Nance Jr., Dyson Daniels, Jose, you know, Matt Ryan, Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Like, that's not my favorite, but maybe. But at least your starting 5 is, you know, or 4 of them is really good. That's why this trade, I just don't know if it works in that sense. Maybe if, you know, Jimmy Butler walks, you can get Bam, but keep CJ, Ingram, Herb, and Hawkins in like a pick or 2 at that point for Bam Adebayo. That at least gives you a little bit more. You'd have CJ, Herro, Trey, Zion, Adebayo. That's a little bit better, I think, but it's still not great. Your bench is still kind of weak there. So that's where this gets a little bit interesting. I struggle to see this working, and it requires something out of the Pelicans' control and Jimmy Butler leaving. It's an interesting idea nonetheless, though. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Good trade target Thursday? Was that a bad one? Let me know who your trade targets will be. We'll do maybe another one next week. Probably not on Thursday, as we'll have the draft and stuff like that. So a lot more coming here on Locked On Pelicans. I appreciate y'all so much for listening. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.